Good morning. It's Monday morning. It's actually about 4 o'clock. Couldn't sleep much, so I got up early, started looking at the text we're going to talk about today. Glad I got up early to look at it. Some things in here I don't fully understand. Let me read it to you, and we'll focus on a few things. We're in 1 John chapter 3, verse 19. By this we know we are of the truth and reassure our heart before him. For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows everything. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence before God. And whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we keep his commandment and do what pleases him. And this is his commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another, just as he has commanded us. Whoever keeps his commandments abides in God, and God in him. And by this, we know that he abides in us, by his Spirit, whom he has given us. So, a couple of things here. We've been reading in chapter 3 of 1 John here the ideas of, do you practice righteousness or do you practice sin? It's either or, it's not both. And do you love your brother or do you hate your brother? It's one of those contrasts, black and white, either or, not much gray area in that chapter. So I've had people email me back saying, wow, this chapter's feels like convicting, even condemning. One person suggested that when they read this book, they don't even feel like they're a Christian because of failures, and we all have failures. I think John is actually addressing that very thing here. And just for a few moments, that's what I want to talk about. When it says here in verse 19, by this we know that we are of the truth, and we reassure our heart before him, by this, referring to what he just stated. And that is, do you love your brother? And obviously, loving a brother or sister in Christ is not perfect. There can be no sense of every aspect of my being loves my brothers and sisters. And sometimes I just don't. Sometimes I'm frustrated. Sometimes I want nothing to do with them. So we all are there. So let's not allow that to condemn us. And when he says this, by this we know that we have the truth and reassure our heart before him. For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows everything. I want to suggest to you here the word heart, as I've studied this, at the commentators and translations, the word heart is probably best translated as conscience. When your conscience condemns you, your heart being at the core of being who you are, which includes your conscience. And sometimes our conscience comes to us and says, you know what, you're not doing well. You just read that you're not supposed to practice sin, and you are. So you don't even know God, and your heart condemns you. Sometimes in that, God comes and overrides your conscience and say, listen, I know you. I know what you believe. I know that you are trying. So relax. That's when God reassures our hearts. So I don't want to give us excuses to continue in sin. I don't want to give us excuses of not loving our brothers and sisters. But there's no perfection in this life. So can you see that trajectory, as we talked about the other day, the stairway to heaven? Can you see the trajectory of growing in a love for righteousness and wanting to do what is right? A desire, as it says here, of wanting to please him. Can you see a trajectory of loving your brothers and sisters, of being more concerned about them than you used to be? Well, that's proof God is in you. So he reassures your heart. Don't condemn yourself. If you can see none of it, then you ought to ask the question, do I really believe? Because at the end there is what he said. Here's what he said. And this is his commandment, verse 23, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another, just as he has commanded us. So do you believe in Jesus? Have you trusted in Jesus? Is he alone the person you are trusting to save you? And do you grasp that he has saved a people for his own possession, and we are to be concerned and love one another? Look at those things today. Difficult passage. First John is really challenging me and you to step up and do what we've been called to do. But let's not bury ourselves in condemnation when we fail. Let's go to God, confess it for what it is. We've rebelled, we've sinned, receive his forgiveness, and let him reassure our hearts that we belong to him. We'll talk tomorrow.